Now, you've probably seen ads for the watch brand Movement. MVMT, or Movement, is a brand frequently shilled by some of the internet's biggest personalities, who promote them as being of incredible quality, design, and craftsmanship. These watches are meant to improve you as a person. Some even claim that these Chinese-made, affordable luxury watches are better than Rolex, despite being less than 1% of the price.
In my opinion, Movement watches are better than Rolex.
Due to these extreme marketing tactics and their subpar products, Movement quickly became the laughingstock of the wristwatch community. Many reviewers, myself included, have panned them for being overhyped junk with little substance. And the worst thing about it is they weren't just built badly, they looked awful too, which isn't ideal for a watch that's supposed to improve your style. In fact, it's speculated that Movement was originally rebadging Alibaba watches due to the glaring similarities I've previously showcased. Overall, I found the designs incredibly generic and crude, the leather straps atrocious, and the build quality non-existent, all for a retail price that didn't add up. Essentially, they belonged alongside last night's supper, a total waste of money for anyone after a half-decent timepiece. There were much better options available from other brands, and you could get near identical watches for a fraction of the price directly from Chinese wholesalers like AliExpress. Are such criticisms still valid though? You see, it's been almost 5 years since I last reviewed Movement, and that was on my old channel. In that time, a lot has changed. Not only has my hair disappeared, but Movement was purchased by the Movado Group, a huge conglomerate that owns multiple fashion watch brands. They've since released a string of other designs, some of which look more original. Are these watches still that terrible? Has the acquisition led to an improvement in the quality of their goods, meaning these influencers might actually now be telling the truth? Well, I've gotten hold of some of Movement's current models to hopefully find out. Thanks to Amazon for effectively covering the cost of these for me. First up, the all-new Field. This aptly named Field watch sells for about £99 on the Movement website, which is equivalent to about $115, and around £75 on Amazon, which is more like $90. To my knowledge, this model released after the Movado takeover, so I'm interested to see what's what. The second piece is the Chrono, which sells for between $120 and £270, or $130 to $300, depending on your chosen colour and case material. I managed to get this unit when it was selling for £104 UK, or about $120 on Amazon UK. I know the Chrono is one of the oldest pre-Movado collections they offer, and I chose it because I'm keen to discover if these aging models have been updated and improved, or if they're just as bad as when they originally released. Let's delve into it. Both came in square boxes, a step up from the generic rectangular container the quartz models arrived in last time. These have a textured outer and a fluffy pillow, which gives a much better first impression. It's not overkill, mind you, so hopefully the watches haven't been skimped on. Hopefully. In terms of first impressions, I immediately noticed a weight increase. Previously, with the 40 series especially, the cheap lightweight construction was apparent within seconds, and more than anything, they looked bare bones. I have to say, this time, that's not quite so. The steel used in both of these pieces not only looks slightly better, but feels relatively substantial rather than wafer thin. The material used here is the industry standard 316L steel, and each features a brushed finish, which is the optimal choice for both styles. Some brands attempt fancy polished finishes at this price, and usually end up with a cheap-looking final product. Case in point, the Sterling watches I reviewed a couple of weeks back. Field watches, given their purpose, tend to suit matte finishes, and the same can be said of the black-cased chronograph, which could have ended up looking like plastic if a glossy finish had been used. So whether a purposeful or accidental move, I think Movement has taken the right approach. In addition to the brushing, these cases are fairly well cut and rival many brands in the same price range. In fact, Timex, who previously beat Movement in this category, continues to produce many chrome-plated brass watches at this price, which now look pretty feeble in comparison. These Movement cases aren't industry-shattering or anything as they'd have you believe, but they are at least serviceable. Something to note is that the black-coated one will probably chip and scratch noticeably over time, as has been the case with this gold Movement Classic that I got hold of ages ago. As such, I'd probably just stick to silver if you're after some durability, or at least if you want it to look decent for as long as possible. Or maybe in that case you just won't be buying an MVMT. Additionally, these two have received a nice water resistance bump, up from the meager 3-bar splashproof ratings I've previously experienced. This is likely due to the use of screwbacks rather than snapback rears. The Chrono has 5 ATM, while the Field boasts a decent 10 ATM, meaning you can easily swim with it on wrist. You can even go surfing if you want. Just keep your eyes out for sharks. Avoid being tracked and preyed upon yourself with our sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Surfshark costs less than the production of a movement watch, so barely anything. You can use their app and browser extension to browse privately online, preventing websites from tracking you or stealing your data. We use Surfshark VPN when creating those things down there. Yeah, those description product links. Even though we're UK based, those links usually take you to a web page in your country. Well, we use Surfshark to switch our device's geolocation to other countries, allowing us to smoothly browse international sites and find the right products with no limits. You can use this service yourself to find geo-restricted special edition watches, as well as to view region-locked TV shows and movies on Netflix. I'm even using Surfshark to get easy lobbies in video games like Call of Duty. All you need to do is set your geolocation to a far-flung part of the world where the player base is far less experienced, and voila, you'll be racking up the wins in no time.
Yes! Come on, baby! Woo!
How come streamers play against opponents who never shoot back? Now you know the secret. Surfshark has a special holiday deal running through November and December, where you can get 85% off and 3 extra months free. Now that's a discount Invicta would be proud of. Use the link in the video description and enter code BWC at checkout so you don't miss out. Now back to my beloved MVMT. My only real criticism of the Field's case is that the crown is positioned very low, which is a tad unsightly from a side-on perspective. Talking about unsightliness, let's move on to aesthetics. I'm just gonna say it, the Chrono is and has always been an ugly duckling. It targets the minimalist look, but is, if anything, far too simple, with a design that looks unfinished rather than well considered. This is evident from the handset, which is far too short for the watch it's fitted to. The skeletonized hands are so far from the hour markers that they look like they've been taken from a completely different watch, while the baby blue secondhand color just doesn't fit the monochrome look whatsoever. The indexes are uninspiring black cubes that look like they were chosen for cost-cutting reasons rather than artistic ones. The final result looks cheap and toy-like. If you're after a minimalist chronograph, I think Braun and Junkers do a much better job, despite their shortcomings. And yes, the products are advertised as Braun in the UK, even though I know they're supposed to be pronounced Brown. Thankfully, the Field is way more appealing than the Chrono. To be clear, I think it still looks relatively cheap, given that everything is just printed to the dial with nothing in the way of texture. Nevertheless, I think it's relatively good looking. Never thought I'd say that about a movement watch. Not only does the handset fit this time, but the whole colour scheme works in harmony, and it feels like the finished look had a properly thought out purpose from the start. While the font style is run-of-the-mill, this piece does have extra touches, including a neat dark date window at 6 o'clock, which is positioned a bit high but still fits quite well. There's even a raised chapter ring that has bright orange triangles at every 90 degrees, matching the tip of the second hand, and it's also got fairly decent luminescence, especially on the 2 main hands. Yeah, for once it seems like someone with an ounce of skill has designed a movement watch. Yeah, to be honest, if this was smaller, I'd genuinely consider wearing it, I think, because yeah, you see, sizing is still a bit of a hurdle. The Chrono is huge at 45mm, meaning it's pretty much reserved for the BFG. The Field is still fairly beefy at 41.1mm, so it won't be super viable for small wrists, though its 48mm lug-to-lug and 10.2mm thickness mean it should still suit most arms. Does a Field watch need to be this big? Probably not. If anything, this seems to be the genre where small watches shine. Still, I'll take 41mm over 45 any day. I'll also take Sapphire over Mineral, though I'm afraid that upgrade still hasn't happened. These pair are still using the lower tier Mineral glass, which is cheaper to produce and less scratch resistant than the preferred Sapphire. While I wouldn't go so far as to call Sapphire the new norm for around $100, many AliExpress brands are offering this as standard now, so Mineral shouldn't be particularly praised. The straps are also something that doesn't deserve much praise. The one on the Field isn't bad. It's a fairly thick canvas 2-piece band with quick release tabs for speedy changes. It features no lining and is a tad scratchy, but I think it should be suitable for most users. That fits to the Chrono, on the other hand, is absolute garbage, comparable to the leather bands I experienced on those previous movement watches. Okay, it's probably a fraction better, with a more supple feel that doesn't warp quite as easily, but overall, it looks extremely cheap, and the faux suede-like surface is bound to accrue grime in no time, just like its forebearers. Unless you want to be walking around with a worn-out band after a couple of weeks, you're going to need to budget for a replacement strap if you buy this Chrono. Powering both of these watches is the infamous Miyota Quartz Movement. Movement's founders like to tell you how much of a big deal these are time and time again.
Miyota came to us because we were making noise and doing well. We use a Miyota Movement. Some of these watches that you're seeing aren't even a brand name movement. You know, it's a Miyota movement. Japanese movement is a Miyota movement, a quality movement.
Miyota?
Miyota is not a bad quality movement.
Currently, the entire line is Miyota.
We use a Miyota movement.
In reality, these are just dirt cheap Japanese movements that are fairly reliable, but but aren't better than most other bargain bucket quartz movements. Specifically, the field is rocking a bottom of the barrel unadjusted Miyota 2315, which is about as basic as it gets. It's still pretty accurate, but the hands are inconsistent when it comes to hitting markers, and the second hand will bounce and recoil a fair amount compared to other movements I've tried from Seiko and Casio. It's fine, but just don't believe any of this affordable luxury nonsense surrounding these. It's just not true. Ironically, my case removal tool isn't large enough to fit the giant rear of the Chrono, so I can't confirm exactly what's inside that one. However, given the Pekka-like hands, I'd guess it's something similar. Inside the case back, you'll also see the stamp confirming that these are Chinese made, despite any American style marketing you might have seen. So, are movement watches any good these days? Well, I wouldn't call myself impressed, but I have to say I'm quite surprised. Both watches are slightly better than the horror show I combated previously. The Chrono, while very poorly designed, at least has a solid feeling case. Meanwhile, the Field is an unexpectedly capable watch that, if you can find it at the right price, rivals or even supersedes Timex and a couple of others too. Would I wear it? Probably not, though I can't say it's a terrible watch for $75, which as far as movement goes is major progress. I would still urge you to shop around, as this Field, like other movement watches, varies in price significantly depending on where you get it from. I frequently see this selling for under £60 or $70 on Amazon here in the UK, which is much fairer than the price on the movement website, though that can be reduced with discount codes or offers. At the lower figure, it's honestly a respectable choice, but at the higher end of that range, it's much harder to justify. Whether these upgrades result from Movado's influence or the owners of Movement becoming fed up with being memed online, I'm unsure, but the improvements are appreciated nonetheless. If this brand is all about getting people into watches, it's good news that fashionistas will have a slightly better jumping off point than before. Some of their range is still trashed here, there's no doubt about that, but hopefully we'll start seeing more offerings like this Field in the future. For some even better Field watches, check out this video next, where I go through some of the best value options. What's gonna happen next? Maybe they will be better than Rolex.